There are women who, upon reaching a certain age, feel as if they've become invisible, not because no one looks at them, but because they no longer feel seen. They've done their part, held everything together, been there for everyone, and yet something has slowly dimmed inside. You might not say it out loud, but you notice it in the gestures, in the silence after a meeting, in the way you walk into a room, not knowing whether anyone will register your presence or not. When did it stop mattering? Or was that never what was really at stake? I've seen this up close, in friends, in women in my family, in long conversations that start out about something else and end up touching the heart of the matter. This isn't about being liked. It never was. It's about preserving a way of being in the world that doesn't depend on approval or on someone else's desire. Is it possible to become stronger, even more attractive, without becoming hard or cynical? What changes when a woman stops trying to please and starts putting her inner world in order? My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. What follows are 7 habits, grounded in the philosophy of the ancient Stoics that helped me understand dignity in later life, and that I've seen transform the presence of many women who no longer wanted to compete, but to inhabit their lives with calm, weight, and meaning. I'm not going to explain theories. I'm going to think out loud with you. And maybe in that process, something will begin to fall back into place. 1. Composed presence and visible calm. There's a way of entering a room that isn't learned in courses or bought with expensive clothes. You notice it the moment someone crosses the threshold. It's neither speed nor slowness. It's the absence of hurry. The body doesn't ask permission, nor does it intrude. The back holds itself, the gaze rests, the hands don't hide. You know what I mean, because you've felt it before, maybe years ago, when you didn't yet feel the need to prove anything. That kind of presence doesn't seek attention. It makes attention unnecessary. I think about this because I've seen the opposite too many times. Valuable women, full of history, who walk in apologizing with their bodies, quickening their steps, justifying their existence with too many words. They don't do it out of weakness, but out of habit. For decades, they were taught to be available, not to take up space, to move quickly through life. What would happen if today you chose to walk in slowly, not so you'll be noticed, but so you can inhabit your own rhythm? Visible calm isn't an aesthetic gesture. It's a consequence. It's born when you stop chasing approval, when you know where you stand. Epictetus said that no one is free who does not govern themselves. I've seen that translated into something very simple. Those who are ordered on the inside don't fall apart on the outside. The posture straightens on its own. The voice drops a tone. Words are chosen more carefully. There's no effort, only coherence. Picture an everyday scene. You arrive at a family gathering. The younger ones talk fast, interrupt each other, check their phones. You sit down, place your feet firmly on the floor, observe for a few seconds before speaking. You don't compete. When you say something, you don't repeat it, and you don't over-explain. Do you notice how the atmosphere shifts? Not because you're superior, but because your calm introduces order. People sense it, even if they can't name it. Here's a concrete tool, simple and demanding. Practice entering every space as if you already belong. Before opening the door, release your shoulders, lengthen your neck, breathe through your nose, and walk a little slower than usual. Don't look at the floor, don't search for eyes. Stay. Do it every day, not to be liked, but to remind yourself that you're not arriving late to your own life. There's a phrase that stayed with me for a long time and feels especially true here. Calm isn't announced, it's noticed. But be careful, because this kind of presence begins to unsettle those who live rushed or hungry for attention. And that's when the temptation to hide again appears. The question is, whether this time you will, or whether you're ready to hold your ground when you're no longer running. 2. Disciplined self-care of the body. There comes a moment in life when the body stops being an automatic ally and starts asking for accountability. It doesn't do it dramatically, it does it through small signals. You wake up a bit stiffer, you get tired sooner. A pain shows up uninvited. When this happens, many women look in the mirror searching for youth, when the real question should calm elsewhere. How dependent are you becoming without realizing it? I'm not talking about aesthetics, I never have. I'm talking about sovereignty, about being able to get up on your own, walk with confidence, sleep without pills, choose what you eat, and when you rest. Disciplined self-care isn't vanity, it's foresight. It's understanding that every simple routine you sustain today takes power away from tomorrow's fragility. Seneca warned that the body must be trained to obey the soul. I translate it this way: take care of the basics, or you'll end up negotiating your dignity. Think of a very common scene. A woman who starts declining invitations not because she's uninterested, but because she's tired. Another who avoids traveling because walking feels uncomfortable. Another who tolerates poor treatment because she fears being alone and not managing on her own. Physical decline doesn't only affect the body, it erodes character. Little by little, it reduces your margin of choice. And that, even if no one says it out loud, shows. Real vitality is attractive because it communicates capability, not effort to appear well. There are no heroic formulas here, there are sober habits. Move your body every day, even if it's just a little. Sleep with respect, not as an afterthought. Eat without punishment or excess. Take care of hygiene, clean clothes, tidy hair, not to look young, but to not abandon yourself. The body understands consistency, not promises, and it responds with something very concrete: living presence. I offer you a simple tool. Choose a minimal daily routine that doesn't depend on motivation. It could be a 20-minute walk, stretching when you wake up, preparing a simple, nourishing meal. Write it down, respect it, don't negotiate it. When you fail, you resume without drama. That's discipline, not punishment, not obsession, calm firmness. There's an uncomfortable truth few want to hear, and I say it carefully. Lasting attraction is born from vital energy, not from masking exhaustion. And that energy is built. If you don't sustain it today, tomorrow, someone else will decide for you what you can no longer do. The question is whether you're willing to start now, while you still choose, or whether you'd rather wait for the body to decide on its own. 3. Clear limits without theatrics. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from the body, but from having said yes too many times when inside it was no. You know it. It settles in slowly, almost politely. It starts with small concessions, with unnecessary explanations, with that habit of justifying yourself so you won't inconvenience anyone. And one day you realize your life is full of decisions you never fully made. You just let them happen. Setting limits isn't becoming hard. It's becoming ordered. A woman who respects herself doesn't need to raise her voice or create scenes. She says what's necessary at the right moment, and then she holds it. That's the difficult part. Because a limit isn't tested when you announce it, but when someone tries to cross it. That's when the inner trembling appears, the learned guilt, the fear of being left alone. How many times have you stepped back so the other person wouldn't feel uncomfortable? I've seen very clear examples of this in later life. Children who decide schedules, favors that turn into obligations, friendships that only call when they need something. There's no explicit malice. There's habit, and habit feeds on your unconditional availability. Marcus Aurelius reminded us that no one can degrade you without your consent. In practice, that consent often shows up as silence or long explanations. Thinking out loud here is unavoidable. Why do we feel that saying no makes us selfish, but saying yes until exhaustion feels like virtue? Maybe because for years we confused love with constant sacrifice. But love that demands self-abandonment isn't love, it's erosion. And erosion over the years shows in the eyes, in the tone, in the posture, also in how others treat you. There's a concrete tool that can change a lot. Practice the brief no, no story, no long excuses, a no paired with a short, firm sentence. I can't. It doesn't work for me. It's not a good time. And then silence. The body will learn before the mind does. At first, it's uncomfortable. Later, it brings order, and that order begins to generate something unexpected: respect. Let me leave you with a possible scene. Someone insists. You repeat the no in the same tone without adding anything. You don't justify yourself. You don't defend yourself. You simply hold your ground. In that moment, you don't become hard, you become clear. And clarity at this stage of life is a form of quiet power. There's a phrase here that lands like a hammer, and I don't say it lightly. Whoever doesn't set limits ends up living within other people's limits. The tension appears when you understand that this habit can change many relationships. Some will fall into order, others will drift away. The question isn't what you'll lose, but what you've been losing by not saying no. 4. Conversation with weight, not noise. There are people who talk a lot and leave nothing behind, and there are others who say very little and bring order to the room. You know exactly which ones I remember with respect. It's not about intelligence or charisma, it's something else. It's the ability not to fill silence out of nerves, to listen without rehearsing a response, to speak only when there's something worth placing on the table. Over the years, I've learned that words are a form of energy. They can be spent, or they can be invested. Many women, especially when they feel they've lost their place, talk too much without realizing it. They explain, clarify, fill space, get ahead of things, not out of vanity, but out of fear of disappearing. Have you ever caught yourself speaking just so you wouldn't be left out of the conversation? Picture a familiar scene. A long after-dinner talk, opinions crossing, complaints, noise. You could jump in at any moment, but you choose to listen. You ask a precise question. You wait for the answer. Then you say something brief that goes straight to the heart of the matter. You don't interrupt, you don't dramatize. And suddenly the conversation slows down, not because you impose anything, but because your way of being introduces clarity. People don't feel entertained. They feel more clear-minded. This isn't manipulation or a social technique. It's character. Socrates unsettled people because he asked better questions than he spoke answers. He didn't need to shine. He needed to understand. In later life, that attitude becomes even more powerful because almost no one truly listens, and whoever does becomes a natural point of reference. Here's a concrete tool you can start using today. Before speaking, ask yourself whether what you're about to say adds clarity, meaning, or calm. If it doesn't, stay silent, not as punishment, but as selection. And when you do speak, lower your volume, reduce your words, look at the other person, don't compete for space, occupy it with presence. Something uncomfortable shows up when you practice this. Some people feel exposed in front of your silence. Others try to provoke you, so you'll return to the noise. Don't fall for it. Hold your weight. Because there's a phrase worth saying only once here. Whoever speaks with intention doesn't need to speak much. The tension remains when you realize that changing the way you converse can completely change how others perceive you. And that won't always be comfortable for everyone. 5. Everyday emotional independence. There's a quiet form of dependence that isn't visible from the outside. It has nothing to do with money or the body. It has to do with waiting for the message that doesn't arrive, for the gesture that isn't repeated, for the call that used to be frequent and now is sporadic. You go on with your day, you fulfill your duties, you do what needs to be done, but inside, something is on hold. And living on hold wears you down. I've seen it many times. Women who are strong in practical matters, capable, resourceful, but emotionally tied to small external signals. Not because they're weak, but because for years they placed affection at the center of their identity. When that affection changes, withdraws, or becomes irregular, the entire inner structure begins to wobble. How much energy is lost every day interpreting other people's silences? Thinking about this is uncomfortable because no one wants to feel needy. And yet, emotional independence isn't coldness, it's inner support. It's being able to appreciate affection without depending on it to stay standing. Viktor Frankl spoke about the ultimate freedom of the human being, the one no one can take away. I see it in small things, in not checking your phone anxiously, in not changing your own plans for crumbs of attention, in not begging for presents. Imagine a simple scene. You have a free afternoon. You used to fill it waiting for someone to confirm something. Today, you use it anyway. You go for a walk, read, tidy up, do something that belongs to you. The message may arrive or it may not. And when it does, it doesn't find you empty, but occupied with your own life. That difference shows it isn't said, but it's felt. And it's deeply attractive because almost no one today is whole on their own. Here's a concrete and demanding tool. Establish daily rituals that don't depend on anyone else. Schedules, activities, small commitments to yourself. Honor them even if a last-minute invitation appears, not as punishment for the other person, but as loyalty to yourself. At first, guilt shows up. Then something better appears, stability. There's a phrase that carries weight here, and I say it slowly. Emotional neediness repels. Inner freedom draws others in. But this freedom has a price. It means accepting that you won't always be chosen first and choosing yourself anyway. 6. Elegance of character in difficult moments. There are moments in life when character reveals itself without asking permission. Not when everything is going well, but when something tightens. A word out of place, a small betrayal, an argument that escalates, a disappointment that hurts more than expected. In those moments, what comes out isn't what you think, it's what you are. And with the years, that weighs more than any appearance. I've seen women become hard to protect themselves, and others become bitter, believing that was strength. I understand it. Fatigue accumulates, losses add up, patience wears thin. But there's a deep difference between defending dignity and degrading yourself in conflict. Elegance of character isn't superficial politeness. It's inner mastery when it would be easy to overflow. Which version of you shows up when someone pushes you emotionally? I think of very concrete scenes. A family argument where everyone raises their voice, a hurtful comment disguised as a joke, a rumor that reaches your ears. In those moments, you have options. You can explode, you can strike back, you can stew in resentment for days, or you can do something harder, not lower yourself. Keep your tone, choose your words, step away in time, not out of fear, but out of self-respect. The Stoics talked a lot about this, though not in gentle terms. They said no one can harm you if you don't cooperate with the offense. It took me years to understand it. It doesn't mean tolerating everything. It means not losing yourself in the attempt to win an argument. A woman who preserves her nobility in difficult moments doesn't submit, she governs herself. And that self-governance shows, even in silence. Here's a concrete tool that requires practice. Before responding in a tense moment, pause for a second and ask yourself which response would let you sleep peacefully tonight. Not what would prove you right, but what wouldn't make you ashamed tomorrow. Breathe, lower your tone, speak slowly, or don't speak at all. Step away if necessary. A timely retreat is also character. There's a phrase worth listening to carefully here. True strength doesn't need witnesses. But this habit has a cost. Sometimes the other person will interpret your calm as weakness or as indifference, and they may try to escalate further. 7. A life of your own with purpose and legacy. There comes an age when simply filling time is no longer enough. You can have a full calendar and still feel the days weigh on you, not from physical fatigue, but from a lack of direction. I've spoken with many women who say they don't know what they want, when in reality what they've lost is something more subtle, a why. And without that why, everything becomes repetition. For years you lived for others. Children, partner, work, responsibilities. That gave structure and meaning. But when that axis loosens, if another doesn't appear, the emptiness becomes evident. Some try to fill it by being available all the time. Others take refuge in soulless routines. Few ask the uncomfortable question, what am I building now that they no longer need me the way they used to? Having purpose doesn't mean having grand plans or noisy projects. It means having inner direction, something that orders your days, even if no one sees it. Learning something new, caring for a space, passing on experience, serving in a concrete way, deepening spiritually, not revolving around others, but walking your own path. When a woman has an inner world, it shows. She doesn't demand attention. She attracts it without seeking it. I remember an older woman, a close friend, who after becoming widowed began studying what she had always postponed. Not to work in it, to understand. The way she spoke changed. Her posture too. She was no longer available for everything. She had her own schedules, interests, silences. People began to seek her out differently, not out of need, but out of respect. Because being close to someone with purpose elevates you. Here's a concrete and honest tool. Write on a sheet of paper what matters to you today, not what mattered before. What you want to care for, learn, leave as a trace. It doesn't have to be grand, it has to be true. Then organize your week around that, even in small doses. Defend it the way you defend an important appointment, because it is. There's a phrase here that lands softly but firmly. Whoever has direction doesn't beg for company. And that scares some people because it means you're no longer easily manipulated. The tension remains when you understand that building a life with purpose may push away those who only wanted you available. But it also brings you closer to something much harder to lose, the feeling that you're living in alignment with who you are, not with what others expect of you. We've gone through 7 habits, not as a checklist to complete, but as a map to help you orient yourself. Unhurried presence, a body supported by discipline, clear boundaries, words with weight, emotional independence, elegance in difficult moments, and a life with its own direction. If you look closely, none of them are about seducing anyone. They're about something deeper, about not abandoning yourself when no one is demanding anything from you anymore. I want to leave you with one final reflection, perhaps the most important one. True attraction in later life isn't born from the effort to be liked, but from the courage to fully inhabit yourself. When a woman puts her inner world in order, the world rearranges itself around her, not always in the way she expected, but in a more honest way. And that honesty is the foundation of dignity. You can start today with something small, a gesture, a boundary, a decision that gives you back your sense of sovereignty. My name is Gabriel, and this space is the Stoic Garden, a place for men and women who don't want to feel better, but to be stronger. If this content resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, share this video with someone who might need it, and leave a comment with the phrase, "I am Stoic," along with the country you're listening from. I read every message, and it matters to me to know from which part of the world this community of people who still choose to live with character is taking shape. Next, 2 videos will appear on the screen that may interest you. Choose one and continue on this path. I'll say goodbye here. We'll meet again.